Cheers. Welcome, everybody. I am Devin. This is Tristan. We are going to do a little podcast. This is the second episode of myself and Tristan. So thank you very, very much for coming back and being willing to talk to me again. I appreciate that, my man. I want to make sure that we're in the correct view. I want to be in gallery view, not speaker view. There we are, so we can see both of us. Cheers. And I understand that you're about to go look at potentially purchasing a new animal for the herd. That's exciting. That's pretty cool. I'm jealous that you're living the connected life. You're adding to the stable's not the right word, but how cool, man. Tell me about that. You have another prospect for the farm, for the homestead.
Yeah. Well, so we've got right now we've got 3 cows here, one milking cow that's producing milk, and then I've got this is some whey from her right here. From whey is like the leftover liquid when you make cheese. You drain out that liquid, and you've got whey, and it's kind of looks like Gatorade. Tastes way better than any Gatorade.
Is that right? Yeah, I remember curds and whey from Little Miss Muffet, right?
Whey is so freaking good. It's taste. It's a little bit. This one's a little bit sour. So there's some that are sweet. There's some that are sour. And this is from a yogurt cheese that we made. So you make yogurt, you strain out cheese, and you got whey. But yeah, we got one milk cow right now, and I'm trying to have another one because you're gonna have anywhere from 3 to 5 months, maybe even more, throughout the year where your cow's not producing milk. Some cows you can milk all throughout their pregnancy, right? Others, they're going to dry up a few months into the pregnancy. So the calf that we've got right now, we've got 3 cows. We've got one milking cow. We've got her calf, a little bull calf, and he's 3 months old right now. So
yeah, Joey, right?
Yeah. So the next time she goes in heat, we're going to get her knocked up. So we're going to get her impregnated the next time she goes in heat. And then in a few months, we won't have any milk. So I'm like trying to figure out, I got to get that constant supply of milk. So because I'm so spoiled with having milk every day. I don't know what I would do without having milk every day. So now I'm trying to find one that's pregnant, that's going to give birth in the next couple months, so that once Linda is knocked up again and she's not producing, then we'll also have a good source of milk. So the idea is basically just to have probably a total of 3 cows to be milking throughout the year, and then one of them will be dry at any given time, likely. And yeah, so that's the plan right now.
That's interesting. I mean, I wouldn't have, I don't have that knowledge from not having had the experience, but it wouldn't occur to me without thinking through it. But yeah, so whenever one of the heifers is pregnant, she's out of the rotation, so to speak. And so you need another one that's actively nursing. So are you going to be breeding?
Some of them will give milk throughout the whole pregnancy.
Okay, that's interesting. Is that based on the kind of cow, or is it just luck
Probably
or the
based
draw,
on
or
genetics and feed? Right? Like if they have a lot of grass, they'll be able to produce, and maybe they'll drive if they don't have enough grass. And then also genetics, like maybe I'm not sure exactly what determines it. I think it's just how it is. Apparently the cow I'm going to look at today, she gives milk for 7 months through the pregnancy, and then she'll dry up for 2.5 to 3 months at the end of the pregnancy, which would, that's not too bad.
No, it's a lot of milk, dude. Are you going to be breeding then? Are you going to breed Joey, or and produce?
Yeah, I mean, he's 3 months old, so I'll put him somewhere else. I'll rent land to put him on and rent pasture for him. I'll keep him, somewhere else, so that I've got the grass for the cows that are giving milk. And then, eventually either, because he's really good genetics, I could breed him or I could slaughter him for food.
Right. How old do you let him get for those 2 purposes?
Maybe a year and a half, probably he'll be ready. I think around a year to a year and a half, they're mature. They'll be sexually mature.
They put so much weight on in that amount of time, huh?
Depending on the conditions, right? If it's got milk for the first 6 months, then it's going to put on a lot of weight. If its feed is not as good, then it'll take longer to mature.
How interesting. We Isabella and I, when we were traveling, we were lucky enough to have a connection to a family friend, this guy Gail Dunstall, who's a real sweet man. He's basically my uncle. He used to come over to the States when my parents lived in Los Gatos, and I was just a little guy, and paint houses and make dollars, and then go back to New Zealand and have New Zealand currency, which goes a lot farther. But we went over there and stayed on his ranch in Waihi, and he had a few cattle and big grazing area, and like a little orchard of limes, I think. He worked his fucking ass off, busted his ass. So that was really cool. I'm a fan of yours. I enjoy. I got a post-it note, so I want to make sure it's out of the way, because I go fucking full Snowden sometimes when I want to.
Oh yeah.
But I'm a fan of yours. I think what you've done with your branding, what you've done with your company, what you've done with your wife in creating products and an excited audience is something really, really cool and really interesting. I want to congratulate you for that, and I want you to know that I think that's super cool. And I want to for real, and I want to speak to that. I want to ask you questions about that, and I want to learn from you the best that I can. I read your content to the best of my ability as much as I can. You put out a lot of content. Your stories often have like 50 tabs, which I do my best to get through. But I guess I want to kind of start like picking your brain with just an overarching question of, what, if there was such a thing, was the catalyst that, what was the dream? What was the starting point? What was the turning point? What was the point at which you consciously made the decision to create what you've created with Primal Edge Health, with moving to Ecuador and creating a homestead? Like this, it's because I've known you before what you've become. I'm so interested and intrigued to get your take on what you've built.
Yeah, no, it wasn't something that it was just like, oh, this is what we're going to build real quick. You know what I'm saying? It's kind of something that more like fell into line kind of serendipitously, right? Like it's, the foundation was kind of set just from like kind of who I am and what I'm into. And then that, we moved to Ecuador before we ever thought we would be doing anything as far as like online commerce and stuff goes, right? When we moved here, we didn't know what we were going to do. But it's something that basically just came about in stages, right? Like, when we first started, I first started a YouTube channel in 2013, right? 2013 or 2014. I think it was either the end of 2013 or the beginning of 2014. And the YouTube channel was essentially, there wasn't a lot of information about ketogenic diets, low carbohydrate, high fat diets. There was very little information out there about it. There was like one other person on YouTube at the time putting stuff out. And so I started a channel, started talking about mostly diet, right? Diet and lifestyle, kind of showing people what we eat and showing people how they could use a high fat, low carbohydrate diet for health, for fat loss, mental clarity, decreasing inflammation and stuff like that. And I don't know, this is like the lifestyle stuff kind of started to come into play, right? I think people just like the kind of aesthetic of what they saw, like in the background and whatnot. And it just was
hard not to. Bro, show everybody real quick that's watching this where you live. Let's look out your window real quick. If you can move the camera. You showed me where you're going to go to look at the cow, and it was breathtaking. How beautiful. So you are in, this isn't the Andes, or is it?
Yeah, so that's the Andes right there. It's just kind of hills and towns down that way somewhere. I got to go for a walk over the backside of that mountain. There's a little trail you can see along that tree line.
Yep, I do see that.
Take that up and around. I think I'm told it's 45 minutes, 30 to 45 minutes, maybe 30 minutes for an Ecuadorian, 45 minutes for me. Walk on that trail right there. So yeah, that's where I'm going. It's we're up in about 5,000 foot elevation here. Wow. It's real steep, kind of just big rocky mud piles, basically what I would describe the Andes as.
I remember seeing a video of yours maybe 2 years ago. I have a terrible sense of time, to be fair, but you were going on a hike and you were so jazzed about being where you are. It was like after a rain, and it was that, that wonderful kind of charged atmosphere, and you were just jacked and talking to the camera, and I could feel your stoke.
Yeah.
I really have gained a great amount of, how would I say, like peace of mind from connecting to, just to things that put me closer to the earth, whether it's surfing or skiing are kind of my two primary things, but just going on a hike. And I wonder if that's a big part of what you're doing and how you feel about where you are. Do you feel real connected to the land? Are you getting to be kind of a steward of where you are?
For sure. Yeah. I mean, as far as like, feeling physically, mentally, spiritually healthy, I think where you're at is very important, right? If you're living in like a slum somewhere surrounded by junkies who are treating themselves horribly, like we get imprinted by that. We start to take on those traits, right? Like if you're living in in a college dorm with a bunch of kids who are, drinking all day and, doing just self-destructive stuff, you're going to take on those traits and you're going to feel like that. I mean, you're living in a suburb where nobody knows their neighbors and everybody's jealously looking at everybody's lawn and thinking how, oh, my lawn can be better than theirs. My clothes look better than theirs. Like you take on traits from people around you in your environment, in your community. And that's a normal thing. I mean, we start to, we mirror the environment around us. So I think, where we live and what we spend our time doing, it's very important. And, being outside, being around animals, being around, the sounds of birds and the wind and, seeing the stars and having clear skies. Like to me, it's really important. And I feel real fortunate to be here. And that's why we choose to be here, right? Kind of in the middle of nowhere. And that's what I like about it.
Yeah, that's something I hadn't thought about, that you guys have very little light pollution where you are.
Yeah.
As you say, that must be something special, man. Seeing the Milky Way and just all the stars come out at night. That's a special thing for sure, dude.
Yeah, it's been kind of cloudy here lately. But it's the rainy season right now, so the stars every once in a while they'll pop out. And there's a little bit of light pollution from town, but it's not, I mean, it's not like a big city or anything. It's just a few
right.
lights, but it's
Right.
nice. Like I like being able to see the stars. I like being able to go outside and have some quiet, and I can walk up the hill behind us, and and being pretty remote feeling area, even though we got neighbors close by. We have a cool neighborhood here. And but yeah, I think it's important to have quiet time, some solitude every once in a while, especially.
Sure.
It's always something that I crave. Like even living in Santa Cruz, I used to go and walk down at the like at the bottom of what's it called, like Empire Grade, where Empire Grade meet, like right at the bottom of the school. Like, there's that
cream
pasture.
grade, like where. Oh yeah, I mean yeah, there's the open space. There's lots of like ag land in there, and
yeah, there's that little pasture, and then there
circle.
was deep inside there was some old farm buildings and stuff. But I always like going down there by that little forested area. I remember like following a bobcat for a while down there one day, and just I don't know, like just going there and hanging out and reading, where it was real quiet. Yeah, I've always really enjoyed like being outside and being in quiet areas and in nature. So it's
me too, man. Me too. I get it.
Yeah, I mean, I used to go like you used to go surf, and I would just go kick it on the beach, and we used to do that all the time.
How's the kids doing? How's the family? How's and everybody's good?
The kids are good. They're doing their homeschool. We had breakfast. She'll be 8 years old in May, on May 7th.
Wow.
Ryder will be 4 in September. And
wow.
they're cool, man. They're kind of they're getting a little antsy. They want to be able to go to town and go see their friends because we're on we got like a 2 p.m. curfew here where no one's allowed to be in town after 2, and like kids are all kind of basically locked in their houses. The schools here are canceled. Our kids are homeschooled anyways, but they want to go play soccer with their friends, and they want to see their buddies and play with all their little homies. But they're good. They're not, they got each other, and they enjoy it here. They got chickens, they got sheep, they got the cows.
That's wonderful.
They got responsibility stuff. So
4 years apart, I think is still in that zone where they're gonna be pals.
They're best friends.
Right. I was talking to my wife about that. She's 2 years apart from her sister, and they were thick as thieves like for parts of their lives. But me and my brother are 6 years apart, and he was always in the next stage of life. So we were never.
Yeah, that's how I was with my brother. Like from the time I was like 12, it was just like, dude, get out of here. I got big boy things to do. Like you thought.
Right. And what's the age difference?
She was 4 when he was born.
No, I mean you and your brother. What you're saying?
Oh, me and my brother, 6 years. Same as you.
6 years, same. Right. That's funny.
My sister was 3 years younger than me too, and I was the same with her. So even though she was 3 years, but she was, she's a girl, and she had very different like.
Yeah, that's different too, right? Eric, remember Rude? Eric Rude. He has twins. He's got a 2-year-old, and they're hilarious.
Dude, that's so cool.
Skateboard and everything else. Awesome. He got the vasectomy right away. This is one of my honest feelings among the rest of my honest feelings. Just one of them. I count myself very lucky to have friends like you guys, because without the circle of people that I respect and have known and have palled around with, I would have less navigational signs for moving forward. Like we're doing our own life and making our own way and so forth, me and Isabella, and we're looking at having kids here in a little bit. But the fact that I have you in my friendship circle, Eric and Mike Robards and these other guys that have children.
Mike's got kids.
Yeah, Robards has 2 kids too. Yep.
How old are they?
He's got a boy and a girl, and I'm not really sure, honestly. The girl's
so cool.
Younger.
I miss that guy. I love that guy.
Yeah, he's a good dude. He's a solid dude.
Are you gonna see him anytime soon?
No, probably not. He moved out of the Bay to Sacramento.
Okay.
Got a big old house because he's been doing sales and making money. And his wife Brittany is from a real well-to-do family that owned a huge amount of agricultural land in the Bay, from what I understand. And so they are, So my point is, it's a real interesting feeling for me to at once like have that critical voice and thinking about all the reasons why I can't and why I'm not good enough and why I could never be a good father and all this shit that's consistent with just my own negativity, you feel me, that we all deal with. Not that anybody else feels that way, but those are things that I
for sure, man. It's so hard. It's like, because you think it's like I'm probably, you think you're just going to automatically make all the same mistakes as all the people around you, and the things that you maybe thought that your parents did incorrectly. It's like it haunts you in certain ways. But yeah, I was fortunate enough. I know some cool people who had kids, and it was a similar situation where it's like, I saw good, healthy families that were raising their kids in a way that I was inspired by. So it was like, oh man, cool. Like I could have kids. I could be stoked on this, Whereas like even just living in California, living, around in Santa Cruz, and I didn't know anyone had kids or anything except, in the house we lived in before we moved, right? Before we left Santa Cruz, you remember the little house, that little like converted, it was a shipping container, like a 20-foot shipping container that was converted into a house that we lived on in the barrio there.
Yes. You had Duke. I remember Duke.
Yeah.
That was the most vivid memory I have of that house, because he was a little puppy and he grew up when you were living there, right?
Yep.
Yeah, I remember that.
He just died a couple years ago. But
he was a good dog, yeah.
He was great. Yeah, Duke was cool. And you had Maverick. Maverick would come over and they would play.
Yep. That's right.
That house that was on the boardwalk, and that whole neighborhood, it was like mostly like gangbangers and drug dealers and stuff.
Yeah, the
Except,
beach flats, right? That's
yeah,
what they
the
call
beach
it.
flats.
Yeah.
Right across the way, though, there was like the only it was one family, and there was three generations living in this home. So there was this guy Phil, and he was like this old school hippie dude, but he wasn't really like like your typical Santa Cruz lefty hippie. He was more like he was a handyman. He did everything himself. He was an artist, and he was kind of like conservative in a lot of ways. I think he was into I remember he would go to those Tea Party rallies at the time. It was 2008, right? So,
Yeah.
but he had kids. He had like 5 daughters and 2 sons, and they all lived in this compound of little houses right there. And then all the daughters were having kids, like they all had babies, and there was grandma and grandpa, and they were living like Ecuadorians live. You know what I'm saying? Like
Yeah, sure.
small houses. None of these people were rich. None of them had tons of money. They all struggled financially, but they were all so happy and they had so much love. Like they were just the coolest little family. And yeah, I was super inspired by Phil and his family. And Phil was the guy that would, like, if there was something wrong with their house, he would come over and he'd fix our fireplace, or he would do repairs on the house and stuff like that. But yeah, I was just seeing those families and seeing how stoked they were. They ran a little daycare, so like other kids would come over and stuff. And I was just, oh, this is so cool. Like all these people have like little 3-year-old, 5-year-old kids, and they're not tripping. Some of them were divorced, and like the dads were off doing whatever, but the kids still had like this, their aunts and uncles were there, their grandma and grandpa were there, and there was so much
Right.
love. And like none of them had money, none of them had, like, a lot of them didn't have cars, but they got by. They were really cool. And so
Okay.
that was one family that really inspired me, and that really made us think, oh, you know what, we can have kids. You don't have to be in like this super financially stable position to have kids and
Right.
raise them well. And also, like, it doesn't matter what's going on already. They live in the worst neighborhood in town. Like the Mexican gangbangers that live in that neighborhood, I remember they like spray painted bears are rats, because their last name was Bear, Baer, and they would like spray paint bears are rats, because Phil used to call cops to the drug dealers. Like they're outside in the park. He's out front of his house calling the cops, just staring them down. Like, yeah, I'm calling cops. And he didn't care, and they couldn't
Yeah.
intimidate him. And he was just like this old white-haired hippie dude running his show. So I was very inspired by them, and I still see them on like Instagram and stuff. Awesome family, and they probably don't even remember us because it was 10 years ago.
Oh, I'm sure they do, dude.
But yeah, that was funny times. So those and then other people around us, like similarly as you're talking about now,
Right.
they showed us just through their own example, and they people from different walks of life, from different countries even. And then these Ecuadorians too, like how they live and how much they love their family. I know your wife's from Brazil, so that was probably pretty cool to see when you guys visited there.
Yeah, that's a really good point. As I kind of am speaking to, have had to face a lot of my self-limiting beliefs as I grow up, right? And one of the major ones, probably the predominant demon that I face, if you will, is anger and hate from growing up. And look, I didn't have it any worse than probably your average American kid, to be fair. So this is not a pity party. It's just me being open with you because I love you and I want to be transparent.
But it's like, dude, you could be I know some of the people from those well-off families that were just miserable emotionally and like psychologically, just because of the messes of like homes that they came from. Even though they're financially well off, they're worse off than a lot of these people, like, in these shitty neighborhoods, who maybe like all their neighbors are on drugs. It's like,
yeah, no, exactly. And so what I'm seeing now is, because for so long growing up, I had this bend where it was like, okay, I saw my parents as a young person where they're both, successful professionals. We had like a big, 2-story house, pool in the backyard, like nice cars in the driveway, right? And my parents split up, as a lot of us have. I've not taken anything away from that. That was really hard on me as a young person, but I don't hold any delusions that that's unique to the American story, but I
Yeah, but
took
it's
with
not
me,
unique, but it's messed up. Like it's
it's
not
super
something
messed
that,
up.
yeah.
Super messed up, bro. And I carried in my heart an anger and a resentment of what I thought was to blame, like vanity and money.
Yeah.
And those were kind of things that I tried to ascribe responsibility to the pain that I had gone through as a young person, and to understand what had broken up the family. Because at like 8 or 9, I just felt like I was on my own. My brother was kind of on his own in college, or moving towards being an independent person, as I was starting to become more, you know, fixed, more crystallized into who I was going to be as a person. And, you know, my parents were kind of just possessed by materialism and stuff. So for so long, I'd been bound up in this real defensiveness towards kind of the
Yeah.
Western world and materialism. But bro, to speak to what you had said a moment ago, it's been a real intense growth opportunity for me to have met my wife, marry my wife, and then be welcomed in as a member of the Brazilian, you know, Brasileira da Familia. And I can't speak Portuguese for shit, but I try. And the point is, the Brazilian culture, and not to maybe go off on a tangent about the difference between cultures, but in Brazil, the family unit, as I imagine in Ecuador as well, is extremely strong.
Yeah.
It's a different cultural
What are the
narrative
divorce
than
rates
the
there?
United
Because in
States.
Ecuador, there's not a lot of divorce.
I guarantee you it's lower than the United States. I don't know that. I could be wrong, to be fair.
United States,
but
it's like,
I
it's
would bet. And
the
I'd
United
bet
States
the horse.
divorce rates are like 50, I was like 50% or something. It's absolutely insane. And it's culturally ingrained, right?
Right.
It's not like it's just a, well, these people are so
Right.
enlightened. I think that the story we get given in the West is, in the West, people are so enlightened and they understand that, we can just be promiscuous and that like,
Well,
this is
yeah,
okay.
personal freedom above all other things. And
Yeah.
I don't
But it's like this
fully,
idolatrous version of freedom where it's like freedom just
right.
means you get to be selfish and autonomous from the repercussions of actually being a responsible human being. And that's what
Right.
gets pushed out of media, right? You look at like all of the stuff that we were fed as kids, right? Like we got Britney Spears and Christina Aguilera, and these like pop stars get made into prostitutes basically before your eyes, since they go from
Right.
being on the Mickey Mouse Club and Disney to
Yeah, they
being
cut all their
prostitutes
hair
having
off.
mental breakdowns. And
No,
those
I feel you.
stars that we imitate. And and then the generation before us, our parents, like you said, like the materialism, the obsession with, oh, if you just go to good education, then you're gonna go get a great job. And it's like these idols that they kind of worship of materialism, the dollar, the democratic process. These have all been shown to essentially be illusory and be not as real as they thought they were. And I think that I think in the West we're having a major identity crisis, and like our generation was just living that out, right? Like our generation is like the millennials are, they're just in between mental breakdowns. The
Yeah,
millennials
there's
are
a cultural shift happening for sure. I mean, there certainly was when our parents came of age in the 60s, right? In the 70s, that cultural change. And now, I hesitate to say that it's anything but predominantly through social media. I mean, the millennials and Gen X and Y seem to be really changing the game digitally, right? We're not out in the streets marching as much as like Occupy or whatever, but we are making things more connected. We're making things more frenetic, manic, which I love. But the digital revolution is really picking up speed, and I think maybe it's a symptom of that soul sickness that the millennials have had to adopt from kind of false narratives. But
I think we've been fractured, like culturally, our families have been fractured, and then it's like people are naturally seeking human connection, but it's kind of been directed all to go through the electronic devices, which do allow us to connect and do allow us a certain amount of human connection through them. But it's not. It's like it's still
not a substitute for the real thing.
it's not
Yeah, I
as
feel you.
it's not as good as real communities, as building
Right.
real resilient relationships with neighbors and producing something locally in your environment. To me, that's like
Right.
that's where I want this to go, right? I mean,
Right.
local food production. I don't care if everybody does it, but it's like for me in my local area, that's what I'm into. I'm into, I'm gonna go meet my friend right now, my buddy who helped me set up my beehives, and he's got this cow that I'm probably gonna end up buying from him. And it's just there's so many like things that we can do, locally as far as commerce goes, as far as building relationships with community, and support and safety networks locally that feels to me way better than online stuff. But the online world is like it is important for building up knowledge bases, community, and also educational resources for people. And that's kind of what we've done through our website and through our forum and our membership site is we've got a
Which is
place where
where,
like-minded.
tell everybody where they can find that real quick.
That's the website's primaledgehealth.com. And we've got a membership site where we run a private forum that's curated where we do coaching calls every week. We have community of like-minded people who support each other, share ideas with each other, offer support to each other. And so to me, that is really fun and that's really awesome. But I love seeing like what people are doing in their real life, right? Because I think not that internet communities are real, but we've got a lot of members in our forum who are moving into homesteading situations now, or moving towards producing their own food, who are getting cows, goats, so moving to their family farmland that they never thought they would ever want to live on, but suddenly they feel this draw to do it. We've been able to network with a lot of really cool people who are doing that, and then people who are way ahead of us in the game as well. People who know a lot more than us about raising animals, efficiently using land and grazing ruminant animals. So it's been really cool seeing that and seeing how those different communities kind of mesh and feed into the real life stuff that's going on too. So it's yeah, the internet world it's weird. It's beneficial in many ways, but it also is a ground for it's a tool for it's a mass communication tool. Every mass communication tool usually they can all be used for good or for social control, right? Television, radio, right? These are things that were that came around not too long ago. I mean, the radio is very new, television is very new, and these are very effective means for starting wars, spreading propaganda, and causing genocide. But they're also ways for people to express themselves and create art and and share ideas, right? So it's kind of just the human condition right there. All these tools, they can be used for good. I mean, this knife can be used for good, for cutting a rope, or butchering an animal, or it could be used to rob somebody or murder somebody. So it's
Well, don't rob or murder anybody, but I do. But that's a good segue because, not to cut you off, I read a essay by the gentleman that you had turned me on to, that wrote Nihilism and the Revolution of the Modern Age, or something like that. I'm paraphrasing the title. Seraphim Rose. Fucking wild looking motherfucker, first of all. Looks like a guy who's taken a little bit too much, something. But I gave him the benefit of the doubt. I read it. I didn't read the book, but I read an essay that he had written called "The Philosophy of the Absurd," and well written guy, interesting. And I just came to something that I thought was a beautiful distillation of the thesis of this paper, and I wanted to put it to you because I think that it is in the same vein as the claim that you just made. And then I know you got to go pretty soon, but I'm gonna telegraph my punches here. I wanna use this quote to hopefully catalyze a opportunity to discuss some of the things that you have been arguing or angrily speaking about online.
about.
I want to poke
Tirade,
the bear. I want to poke the bear here. So because you're a reasonable guy. I'm sure you're a great father. You're a great friend. You are reasonable. I don't think you're out stabbing anybody that doesn't deserve it. Like I hold faith in your moral compass, right? So I would love to provoke you and then see what kind of constructive dialogue we can get into. But that being said, I mean, if that's reasonable or agreeable, so Seraphim Rose in this essay called The Philosophy of the Absurd that he wrote in 2015, which is ascribed to, I don't know if it's the author or his pen name or something, which is Death to the World.
He died in like 1990 something. So
oh, okay. This must have just been when they published it to this particular forum or whatever, this website. Okay, so he talks about how, for the most part, people's practices are absurd in that they are attempts to ascribe meaning to an utterly meaningless world. That's kind of a point that he makes. But then he comes back, and I disagree.
No, he doesn't believe that the world is utterly meaningless. He says that the foundations of the philosophy that's driving the modern world, which is based on nihilism and materialism, there's no meaning from that. It's just everything is what it is. It's just a natural.
No, he says, and I quote, politics, whether of the right, the left, or the center, can no longer be viewed as anything but an expedient whereby universal disorder is given for the moment a faint semblance of order. So politics in its entirety,
it's a disordered false reality. Politics being a disordered creation of man based on the foundations that are, essentially a schizophrenic philosophical foundations where they believe that order is meaningless, that it's all just, that everything is random, right? That everything is just random, that we just come about through random chance evolution.
That's the supposition that he's claiming.
He's critiquing that supposition. So he's saying the present age.
No, he's not. No, he's not. He says politics, whether it's the right, left, or center, so politics can no longer be viewed as anything but, so is 100%. It can't be seen as anything but an expedient, a way of, a quick thing, whereby universal disorder, that is to say, what politics is being put upon the world, universal disorder, is given for the moment a faint semblance of order. So he's saying that politics is all a charade of acting like there's some semblance of order in what is universally disordered. So there's
he doesn't believe that it's universally disordered. That's not what he's saying. The argument is not that it's universally disordered. The argument is based, the politics that people are playing out are based on the assumption, which is faulty, that they're imposing order upon chaos.
Okay, so then let's just start with the first, if we can't agree on that, let's start with the first sentence of the essay. The present age is, in a profound sense, an age of absurdity. That's his opening line, okay? Fair enough. The man believes that the present age, which you say he died like 100 years ago or so, something like this, but in the course of human evolution, we're still kind of in the same age, if you will. So this man is claiming that it's all absurd, whether it's poetics, drama, paint, sculptor, politics, pacifist or militants, doesn't matter. It's all crazy. It's his
Look, if you look at the second paragraph, if you read a little bit further, but art, politics, and philosophy today are only reflections of life. And if they have become absurd, it is because in large measure, life has become so. The most striking example of absurdity in life in recent times was, of course, Hitler's New Order, wherein a supposedly normal civilized man could be a tone and at the same time an accomplished and moving interpreter of Bach, as was Himmler, and a skilled murderer of millions, and who might arrange a tour of an extermination camp to coincide with a concert series or an exhibition of art. Hitler himself, indeed, was an absurd man par excellence, passing from nothingness to world rule and back to nothingness in the space of a dozen years, leaving as his monument nothing in a shattered world, owing his meaningless success to the fact that he, the emptiest of men, personified the emptiness of men in his time. So he's critiquing the whole worldview that assumes that everything is this surrealist theater of the absurd. Hitler was a Nietzsche fan. Hitler was very into the philosophy of Nietzsche.
He's saying that that's the case, that everything is a theater of the absurd. That's the claim that
he's
making.
Saying that
Hitler's an example of it.
No, he's saying that the worldview that allows this is the assumption, the base assumption, that we are all just meaningless billiard balls bouncing around in a meaningless universe, and that there is no meaning except for the meaning that we put to things, which is what
Hitler didn't believe that.
Yes, he did. Hitler
it
was a
was
nihilist. Hitler pushed
consumed by an order. Okay, well, I mean, I hear what you're saying. The thing that I thought was where I fall into ideological step with this gentleman who calls himself Seraphim Rose is kind of the thesis that he moves us to, and that is it's the third to last paragraph. It is futile, in fact, it is precisely absurd to speak of reforming society, of changing the path of history, of emerging into an age beyond absurdity, if we have not Christ in our hearts. And if we do have Christ in our hearts, nothing else matters. So he makes all these lofty claims about, what the world is, whether it's drama, politics, or, state, heads of state.
He's not saying that that's what the world is. He's saying that those are false assumptions based on a foundation of sand that then are proved meaningless over and over again by the masturbatory strivings of man, who's constantly building up these towers of Babel to then be fallen down again and fall further down into a meaningless reality where man thinks he himself is God.
Okay, we're mincing words. He's just saying this is a thing. What you call it is up to you, but he's saying here's things, and he talks about them and how terrible they are. And then he says there's an answer to these things, and it's have Christ in your heart. And I think that is a beautiful doorway back to the light from a very dark and critical and hopeless place, wherein all externalities are inherently evil. Because I think that that's not the case. I think that terrible things happen. I think that there is evil. I think that's fair to say. I think that atrocities do get committed, and there are people with terrible intentions and so forth. But I think that the battleground is within the self. I think that becoming that guy that knows when to use that knife, like you say, this is a tool for good or evil, and knowing that and understanding that inside the self and inside one's own heart, at least assures that the self is not one who would commit any of these atrocities, as you say, trying to create order from disorder or what have you.
Trying to impose your own vain sense of order on things, right? It's like Hitler being the ultimate example of vain madness. A man who believed that the world is meaningless and empty and void, and that meaning and right only come from might, right? Might makes right, right? This is the worldview that he came from. But then at the same time, pretending like his version of might is universally true, right? Saying that there is no universal truth is itself a contradictory statement, because that's a universal statement about truth. You know what I'm saying? It's like saying, like, there is nothing that is universally true. Is that statement also not universally true? So it's like, just at its very core, that's kind of Hitler's worldview boiled down to its distilled essence, right? And that is what he's critiquing as far as the modern worldview goes. And yeah, it's all going to be theater of the absurd if you start with those faulty presuppositions that we get to impose order on everything, right? It's like, oh, it's me. It's like I am the ultimate arbiter of truth. I am the cutting edge of all of this. This is lofty, vain thinking that really leads to misery for us, right? Because then we're constantly chasing our tail because
I find, just let me speak to that real quick. I find that, not to interrupt you, but there's a important balance to be struck, in my opinion, that as a 33-year-old person who's just starting to get their shit together, if you like, I've had to work on in myself. And that is, first, from being a college age person, where I think, and my brother and I have spoken about this, and I think it's a fair point to make, people in college are often more left-leaning, are often of the opinion that they have the answers for society and how everybody should live, and never having worked, never having really done anything to contribute. That is to say, young people. And as people get older, they, I think, learn to have faith in their own abilities to make good decisions, because they've probably made enough bad ones, you feel me, to have seen the repercussions of immorality or malevolence and so forth. So I think as a person gets a little older, into their early 30s, they start to really become an adult and have to face the fact that they are autonomous and have personal sovereignty. But there's a real danger, I would argue, of falling into the worship of the self as opposed to the understanding of like indivisibility, like the fact that you are you and nobody can take that away from you. But at the very same time, you are still, you know, the head of your family. You are a friend in a friend group. You are a member of a community. And all of those are equally indivisible, equally.
You don't want to like mortify the self. It's not about the destruction of the self, right? Like that's that in it, that, you know, the thinking
well,
of
well, no, it's the destruction of the island of the self, the destruction of the idea that you are somehow removed from all other selves, right? Like the idea that we're not all in on the same rock together, because we are. And I think that that's something that young people can fall into with drug addiction or with ideological possession, right? If I can sit here and say, I get it, and those other people don't get it. Well, my contention is everybody gets it. You understand what I'm saying? Everybody has to live life. Everybody has to face the human condition. And whatever theories you come up to define good and evil and mortality and these kinds of things that kind of elude a real definite definition like consciousness is your own choice, yeah? And that's something that you get to have and hold. But what I'm saying is, I think it's really important to both be somebody who believes in their own thinking, that is to say, that has the conviction of saying, well, this is my experience and let's bring that to bear on the conversation, and somebody who's willing to, you know, let an expert speak or defer to other members of the community, other members of the group. And I find it really encouraging when I can plug into something greater than myself. And it's usually the ocean or the mountain. And it's a minority of the times when that's a peer group that can kind of handle my like manic energy. But when I can do that, it's really a healing thing for me, because that energy travels around the circle and kind of enlivens everybody. And so I guess what I'm getting at
it's like,
is,
where does that come from? That's the question too, right?
Where does what come from?
Where does that come from? Where does the ocean come from? Where does that feeling come from that you get, that comfort you get from, you know, being, you know, moving your body, or whether, or connecting with your wife, or, you know, the rapture of, you know, release your emotions in a way. Like, where does that comfort really come from? It's obviously not the ocean itself, right? That's like,
no, it's a greater circulation. So my body has a circulation. My circulatory system, my pulmonary system, my endocrine system is moving stuff all the time. My brain's moving, neuron firings and so forth. And I can be in that. But I can also be in the ocean, and there's the movement of the tides and the current and the wind and the wave. And as soon as I plug into that movement, my system, if you like, feels that. And that's my answer. When I'm with friends, if I'm in a circle with you and other individuals and we can talk, there's a movement of energy that's bigger than my body. And I like that. It is a healing thing. It's like being in the midst of a dance studio with music playing. Now there's something happening that's of a superordinate nature, and it makes all of my systems laminar as opposed to turbulent.
Yeah.
You feel me? So that's my answer to the question. You know, and
Yeah.
I think that the directionality that I take from that thesis is, if I can plug into a movement that is a natural movement, then it heals me. If it's the earth, you know, with growing the grasses, or if it's the movement of the water, or if it's honest to goodness conversation, or if it's, you know, the snowy mountains, then it heals me. The contention that I have, that is, I think, something that speaks to what I was going to say earlier, where you're often speaking on social media about, when I plug into a system, a movement that is synthetic, that is based on rules that some fallible human has made, right? Whether it's a city hall meeting or a business lunch, or some kind of group where there's a movement that's greater than myself in the same metaphorical sense as being in, you know, in nature, that hurts me, because the movement is one of limiting returns. Like if I go to the ocean, there's no zero sum game. I could go and eat some kelp and catch a fish, and you feel me? Like I can sustain myself based on that movement. There's always new flow. But if I'm in a room with people jockeying for position in the same company, somebody's getting knocked down for somebody else to look a little bit better, a little bit smarter, a little bit more ready for that promotion. And the thing that I've realized is I don't want to be in false systems. And if I can, I inject whatever realness I feel that I have into the systems that I'm able to be in. And bro,
right. So then the important question becomes, what determines what is real, what is true, and what is false, right? So it's like we both agree that there is something that is true and false, and it's not like it's just we get to make it up or we get to decide, right? But also it's like sometimes, how can we know to trust our own feelings? Because sometimes, there are times like in your past, right, where you would feel like something was right? Like I might like have felt at times that I needed to, like, what was right was to like take prescription drugs or something, or to like, or to treat people poorly, and to use people to make myself feel better, right? To like, suck off somebody else's energy and siphon their energy for my own benefit, because hey, it feels right, it feels good, right? So it's like, I think it's very important. No, it's like we don't want to live in confusion. We don't want to be chasing our tails all confused. And but we very often, as fallible human beings, as you said, we find ourselves in those positions. So that's why I think it's, and maybe the next conversation we can get more into this, because I'm actually at 12:30 and I got to get out of here. I see it's raining outside. I might have to bring a rain jacket.
Man, you got a book right now.
But we have to. You and I think both agree that truth is not determined by just us. Like we don't just like make up what's true universally, and it can't just be based on our feeling either. Although I think it is, to a certain extent, we have to navigate through our feelings, through our bodies, through our through this interface that we have here. But our feelings can be liars sometimes, and our feelings can lead us into despair and
I hear you. I think
you know what I'm saying? So it's like, that's where theology comes in. And it's like, to me, the theology of the fall, the theology of where we came from, where we're going, and proper presuppositions about the world that we're in are essential, right? And that's why I was eventually led to reading guys like Father Seraphim Rose, or Saint John of Damascus, and some of the early church fathers. And it's, to me, that's there's been no better way of describing where we're at here, and of setting the foundations for proper action in the world and reality than that. And I think the truth has to be our foundation, or it's sand, right? So I think that's why I really like that book, the book Nihilism. It's a book you could listen to it. There's an audio book that of somebody that I know on YouTube made a cool recording of that book that you could listen to as well. But he does a very good job at critiquing the modern worldview and showing how it's absurd in so many ways, and showing that proper foundational assumptions and proper theology, and understanding the fall and why we talk about things like fallible human beings. Were we always fallible? And why do we strive for perfection if we're meant to be fallible? Maybe we weren't initially fallible. Right? And the fall is what kind of describes that, us coming from a place of infallibility and incorruptibility, but then choosing the fall, choosing falseness, and falling out of the garden and into this fallen world that we live in now, whereby death becomes present everywhere, whereas before death wasn't present. Right. So it's like I'm throwing a bunch of deep like fish hooks out there, and it's like, it's so hard to leave a conversation on these notes.
I'm not going to start digging into it because I know you got to go, but I appreciate where you're coming from, and we can pick it up another time.
Let's do it.
But shall we?
I'm sorry I couldn't stay longer. I've got like a crazy.
Dude, you got something to do. You got a good raincoat, I trust?
I got a big piece of plastic to wear, basically. Yeah.
Poncho, right on. Well, hey, I love you, and I would love to get into the discussion more deeply. I wanted to try to poke you a little bit more about online shit, but we'll have to put it on the calendar and get it for next
You
time.
know, you and I could talk for hours, man. So like, we'll do it again. We'll do it again sometime. We can get deeper into it. We can poke and prod and squirm and worm about it. And
All right.
yeah, dude, I was really good talking to you as always, bro. I love you
My
very
pleasure.
much, man. And thank you so much for having me on. Hit me up whenever you need. You got my number. You know where I'm at. I'm here for you, dude.
Yeah, and be safe and take care of that cow of yours.
Yeah, we'll go see how she is. Hopefully the rain doesn't keep up too much. It's just sprinkling outside. So, all right, dude.
Talk to you later,
Devin,
my man. Thank you.
cheers, my brother.